Nacional de las Artes, al Centro Multimedia. Gracias por acompañarnos. Thank you very much, Mitu, for your presence in Mexico. Les voy a contar un poquito. Soy Adriana Casas, directora del Centro Multimedia, y les doy una muy cordial bienvenida, Ilka. Voy a hacer una breve lectura sobre la biografía de Mitu. Ella nació en el Reino Unido en 1984, es diseñadora de juegos, académica y emprendedora. Tiene un doctorado en estética de la interactividad en videojuegos por la Universidad de Portsmouth del Reino Unido. En 2008 fue parte del programa Kaufman Global Scholar y recibió una maestría en ingeniería informática de la Universidad de Portsmouth. Ganó un premio en 2013. En 2014, en 2011 fundó The Teen Shark, un microestudio indie en el que dirige el área creativa, técnica y operacional. En 2013 lanzó Red Shirt, un juego de simulación satírico que utiliza tropos de ciencia ficción para explorar la dinámica social. El juego recibió excelentes críticas de fuentes como Polygon, PC Gamer y Paste Magazine. Ha sido ponente en muchas conferencias importantes y eventos de la industria, tales como la Conferencia de Desarrolladores de Juegos, Games West, Nine World Conference y la Real Academia de Ingeniería de Londres. Fue oradora principal en los premios BAFTA y dio una de las notas clave para el 2015, el Global Game Jam de 2015. Desde 2013, Mitu ha sido embajadora del Steam Videojuegos en el Reino Unido, donde promueve temas de Steam, desarrollo de juegos en escuelas, con un interés particular en la defensa de igualdad de género, sobre todo en el desarrollo de videojuegos. Quiero agradecerle a Raúl su presencia esta tarde, que nos va a ayudar con la traducción, pero sobre todo agradecerle al equipo del taller de realidad virtual por la excelente labor de Leiva y por esta conferencia y lo que nos hace falta el resto del año. Josefo, muchas gracias. Que tengan buena tarde, disfruten la conferencia. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for that really lovely introduction. I don't speak Spanish, so I assume it was lovely. But thank you so much to all of you for coming. It's really wonderful to be here in Mexico City. This is my first ever trip to Mexico ever, and I've been having the best time, so thank you all very much. My name is Mitu Kandeka, and I'm going to talk to you today about the work that I've been doing more recently in both the commercial and research space in games.
Bueno, antes que nada, muchas gracias por esa presentación. Supongo que fue una buena presentación, ya que yo no hablo español, pero bueno, muchas gracias por venir. Me alegra mucho estar en México, es mi primera vez estando aquí. Y el día de hoy les voy a hablar un poco sobre mi trabajo, tanto comercial como en cuanto a investigación.
So I'm going to talk about what I see as being important in the future of games, and I'm going to talk in particular about artificial intelligence and virtual reality, both separately and what it means when those two things converge.
Estoy aquí para hablarles un poco sobre el futuro tanto de la inteligencia artificial y de la realidad virtual, tanto por separado como en la manera en la que convergen.
So, to tell you a little bit more about the work I do, to sort of introduce myself, so I'm a professor of game design at New York University in the game design department. I also started a studio, an indie micro studio in the UK called The Tiniest Shark, and I've also co-founded an AI tools for games company called Spirit, and so we're doing really exciting work in that space, which I'd love to talk to you about today.
Bueno, les hablaré un poco más de mi trabajo. Actualmente soy profesora de diseño de videojuegos para la Universidad de Nueva York. También tengo un microestudio indie que es de Tiniest Shark y también desarrollo herramientas para inteligencia artificial para Spirit.
So at the Tiniest Shark, I make games mostly around the idea of procedural narrative, And I really want to make those kinds of games more accessible to the wider public. So this is just a GIF from the game that I've been working on more recently called Little Invasion Tales.
Bueno, un poco de lo que hago en The Tiny Shark es desarrollo de los juegos, los trato de hacer un poco más accesibles, enfocándome más en la narrativa procedural, y esta es una muestra de este juego.
At NYU, we teach the understanding of games through designing them, through making them. And I've been there for 2 years now. And in that time that I've been there, I've been lucky enough to teach all the different ways that we understand games at NYU. So programming, design, and studying games.
En la Universidad de Nueva York nos enfocamos mucho en enseñar cómo entender los juegos, tanto dividiéndolos como el juego en sí. En los últimos 2 años hemos estado enseñando cómo programar y diseñar el juego.
At NYU, we teach all students how to code because we think that, and I believe that, thinking procedurally is a really important part of game design. It also means that rather than expecting students to make games in big teams, we teach students to do all aspects of game making alone. So we're basically producing designers who are able to code, coders who understand design, artists who understand sound design, and so on. Because games are inherently multidisciplinary, I can't even say it, multidisciplinary, and all aspects of games are really important to game design.
En la Universidad de Nueva York enseñamos a programar videojuegos pensando de manera procedural, y en vez de enseñarles a los alumnos a hacer estos videojuegos por partes o en grupos, los enseñamos a hacerlo de manera individual. Es decir, a los diseñadores les enseñamos a programar, a los programadores les enseñamos a diseñar, ya que la creación de videojuegos es multidisciplinaria.
But most of what I want to talk to you about today is the work I've been doing at Spirit. So I'm the Chief Creative Officer there, I'm one of the co-founders, and we make AI tools to help developers make more expressive characters and stories in games, in VR experiences, and beyond. So we've already been working with a number of developers from indie through to AAA studios, TV and film studios as well, who've been using our tech to create characters who can really understand what a player is saying. And the characters can respond in a meaningful and satisfying way.
Bueno, sobre todo voy a hablarles un poco más sobre mi trabajo en Spirit. Ahí soy jefa de creativa, y bueno, aquí lo que hacemos es enseñar una manera en que sean más expresivos tanto los personajes como las historias en los juegos y en la realidad virtual. Trabajamos con diferentes estudios para crear personajes que respondan mejor a las necesidades del jugador.
So I'm really interested in what that means for games and why we need something like that. But also, what does that ability to have more dynamic characters mean when it's also combined with immersive interfaces, including VR? And actually, the topic of immersive interfaces was basically what I did my doctoral work on, was what I did my PhD work on. So both of those topics and their intersection is really interesting to me.
Bueno, lo que más me interesó es por qué era necesario esto. Aquí hablamos más sobre la dinámica entre la interfaz inmersiva y la realidad virtual. Sobre todo en mi trabajo de doctorado me enfoqué en cómo convergen estas dos disciplinas.
And from a philosophical standpoint, I suppose I've become really interested in working on tools to help other developers make games, because I believe that building tools is actually one of the biggest ways to have the best impact on the industry and on what kinds of games are actually being created.
Y bueno, desde una perspectiva más filosófica, a mí me parece importante desarrollar herramientas para ayudar a los desarrolladores a hacer su trabajo.
So before I continue, I want to tell you a little story about how I knew I wanted to become a game developer, because even though I loved games for a really long time, I played on the Commodore 64 when I was young, etc. But it took me until I was maybe 12 or 13 years old to realize that being a game developer was a real job.
Y bueno, les voy a contar un poco la historia de cómo es que me inicié en esto, cómo fue que quise ser una desarrolladora. Y bueno, por supuesto desde joven me gustó jugar, jugué con consolas como la 64, y fue hasta la edad de 12 o 13 años que me di cuenta que en verdad era un oficio ser desarrolladora de videojuegos.
And the reason I found out that it's a real job was because I watched an episode of my favorite TV show at the time, The X-Files.
Y la manera en que me di cuenta fue porque vi un episodio de mi programa de televisión favorito, Los Expedientes Secretos X.
There was an episode written by William Gibson, which was about this super intelligent computer virus which basically took over this VR world that this person had created, and it was just going around killing people, basically. So here's a picture of a dead body wearing, I guess, a really old Oculus Rift.
Y bueno, en este episodio, que de hecho escribió William Gibson, se trataba de un virus inteligente que controló el mundo de la realidad virtual y básicamente mataba a la gente. Aquí tenemos de hecho una imagen de un cadáver que trae puesto un casco de realidad virtual.
But it goes to show, obviously this was from the early 90s, we've always had this very specific vision of what the future of games might look like.
Y bueno, esta por supuesto es una imagen de principios de los 90 y siempre hemos tenido una imagen muy específica de cómo sería el futuro de los juegos.
But the reason I knew that I wanted to become a game developer was because in this episode there was a particular character who used the online alias Invisigoth. It was this lady. And she was this supposedly cool computer hacker, and according to the other characters in the show, she was one of the best entertainment software developers that had ever lived. And for me, that was a really important moment because it was the first time I had ever seen a game developer represented anywhere in media.
Y bueno, otra cosa que me encantó de este episodio fue el personaje que se hacía llamar Invisible, que se trataba de una hacker que según los demás personajes del episodio decían que era la mejor desarrolladora. Para mí este fue un momento muy importante, ya que fue la primera vez que vi cómo se personificaba un desarrollador en los medios.
And so young teenage me thought that when I grew up I wanted to be this lady, except maybe with different eye makeup.
Y bueno, de adolescente pues yo pensé que quería ser como esta dama, solo que con diferente tipo de maquillaje.
And so that was really the moment that set me on the path of investigating game development as a real career option, but also got me really interested in the future of games. So what was possible with games now, but also the way that we think about what might be possible for games in the future.
Y bueno, este momento desde luego me encaminó a investigar un poco más sobre la carrera y a pensar obviamente cómo eran los juegos en ese momento y cuál sería el futuro de los mismos, cómo serían más adelante.
So, what is the future for games now from where we stand in 2017? So before we look forward, let's actually take a step back and think about the fact that games have kind of always existed at the intersection of our sense of playfulness and whatever our technological capability was at the time. So if you think about the days of the earliest, like the earliest possible board games, or even going further back, the earliest dice games, which were made from the bones of animals, that's, you know, that was the technology of the time, and so that was what was used to create games.
Y bueno, ¿cómo pensamos en el futuro de los videojuegos hoy en día, en 2017? Antes de mirar hacia adelante, echemos un vistazo hacia atrás, en la intersección entre la diversión y la capacidad tecnológica que estaba disponible, por ejemplo, remontándonos a los juegos de mesa o incluso a los juegos de dados que estaban hechos de huesos. Estos se creaban a partir de la tecnología que estaba al alcance en ese momento.
And it's still true now with the latest innovations that we're making in virtual reality and augmented reality.
Y sigue siendo así con las innovaciones más recientes, tanto de realidad virtual como realidad aumentada.
But sometimes looking at that intersection of playfulness and technological capability also shows us where our limits are currently. Sometimes we might yearn to play games that our technology doesn't let us play just yet.
Y bueno, cuando vemos esta misma intersección, eso también nos permite ver los límites que tenemos. A veces añoramos jugar juegos que la tecnología no nos permite acceder a ellos aún.
Games which use more interesting applications of AI and characters that you can really interact with and be understood by, I think that's been an area that a lot of players have wanted to see in games, but games haven't been able to really support that.
Por ejemplo, características de inteligencia artificial y de personajes, la interacción con los mismos y que respondan más. Esto es algo a lo que los jugadores añoran más, sin embargo, la tecnología aún no nos permite llegar a ello.
Most of the work in traditional game AI has been around things like pathfinding, behavior trees, movement, not really to do with with being able to have conversations with characters.
Y bueno, la inteligencia artificial en los juegos nos permite hacer más detección de caminos, movimientos, pero no nos permite como tal tener una conversación con los personajes.
And it's not just players, but game developers obviously have really wanted to tell stories which really respond to a player's choices. But so far in games, that's mostly only been possible by having to write huge amounts of content with lots and lots of little variations.
Y bueno, no solamente es algo que añoran los jugadores, sino que también los desarrolladores quieren generar historias extensas. Sin embargo, no se trata de escribir historias extensas con muchas hojas de papel.
So this is the script for Grand Theft Auto 4, and you can see it's huge, it's ridiculously huge, and some poor writers had to sit there and write all of that out. So you can see that creating even limited possibility spaces is quite expensive and takes a lot of time and isn't great for creativity either. Writers can't just write whatever they want to, they have to think about every choice that the player might want to make.
Y bueno, aquí podemos ver el guión del juego Grand Theft Auto 4, que como podrán ver es muy extenso y que los escritores se mataron tratándolo de escribir. Sin embargo, también nos limita porque no es bueno para la creatividad, ya que hay que pensar en las posibilidades a las que puede acceder el jugador.
And I'm sure that as players, you want for NPCs, non-player characters, to be able to be really responsive and understand the things that you say to them, not just whatever option you can choose on a dialogue tree.
Y bueno, sé que como jugadores quieren recibir más respuesta de los personajes y estos pues no pueden responder tanto a las necesidades del jugador. Solamente nos limitan, el jugador no quiere nada más limitarse a las opciones que les ofrecen.
So at Spirit, we have built a tool called Character Engine, which uses machine learning and some of our own proprietary technology to allow you to create characters who can improvise based on some story that you've created for them.
Y bueno, en Spirit nosotros trabajamos con algo que se llama motor de personajes, que lo hacemos de hecho con nuestra propia tecnología, que les permite hacer que el personaje improvise con base en la historia que ustedes vayan creando.
So the characters can have their own personality, their own emotion, and they respond to the things that a player says.
Y por supuesto los personajes aquí pueden tener su propia personalidad y sus emociones, a la manera en que lo quieran hacer los mismos jugadores.
So this is just a picture of the tool that narrative designers or game writers can use to write one of these characters. I won't go into it in too much depth, but it's a little bit like we're creating tools so that writers can create AI-driven characters without being able to program.
Bueno, aquí en esta imagen podemos ver una herramienta que puede servir tanto para los diseñadores o escritores. No voy a entrar mucho en detalle, pero aquí nos ayuda a crear personajes de inteligencia artificial sin necesidad de programar.
So I'm going to show you a demo of a game that we created using this technology. So this is actually the first demo that we created, and we worked with a mid-sized developer in the UK to create this demo. And this is actually something we showed at Game Developers Conference in San Francisco as well this year. So I'll load it up now.
Bueno, aquí les voy a mostrar un demo de este juego, que es el primer demo que creamos con un desarrollador en el Reino Unido, que de hecho presentamos por primera vez en la conferencia de desarrolladores de videojuegos en San Francisco.
Okay, so in this demo, we wanted to keep it simple, so we just have one character in a room who you can type to. We also have another version of this same thing where we've created a version where you can walk around in VR, so using an HTC Vive. So it's pretty cool to do in virtual reality too.
Bueno, este demo es un tanto sencillo. Aquí solamente trabajamos con un solo personaje al cual le pueden escribir. Tenemos otra versión en la cual podemos caminar utilizando realidad virtual.
Okay, I'm going to start. And so everything that this character says will be dynamic, okay? So there's no pre-recording.
I see this crime now has more investigators. Welcome.
So she's Scottish for some reason.
Bueno, esto va a ser un poco dinámico. Como podrán ver, tiene acento escocés.
Okay, so now we can actually just say anything we want to her. We can say, hello, she's said welcome to us, so we can say hello to her. So I'll just type hello.
Podemos decir lo que sean. Ella nos acaba de dar la bienvenida. Yo solamente voy a escribir hola.
I hope you'll have more luck than the others unraveling this murder.
Okay, do you want to translate
It was actually kind of fuzzy. I wasn't able to understand.
The text is up there.
Oh, okay. Bueno, aquí nos acaba de decir, espero que tengas más suerte que los demás que trataron de resolver este asesinato.
So you can just about see up there, one of the things our system does is output what the emotions of the character are right now. So right now it says she's calm. It's because she's, we haven't upset her, we haven't really said anything to her yet.
Y bueno, en la parte superior derecha pueden ver el output, el sistema. Aquí nos muestra las emociones del personaje. Ahí nos indica que está calmada, es decir, que no la hemos hecho enojar ni la hemos alterado.
Okay, so we don't really know anything that's happened in this story just yet. She's mentioned a murder. We can ask her about the murder. We can also just ask her about anything. But I'll go ahead and just say, what murder?
Y bueno, todavía no sabemos nada de la historia, solamente sabemos que
At approximately 1:45 this morning, Martin Haster was murdered in the Mountain View campus of Voltrox, the company that built me, from blunt force trauma to the head.
aproximadamente a la 1:45 esta mañana, Martin Haster fue asesinado en el plantel de Mountain View de Voltrox, que es la empresa que me hizo. Él murió de un golpe en la cabeza.
And the things that she says in response to us are dynamic, based on the things that she knows that she has talked to us about before or not. So because she's never talked to us about Martin before, she's giving his full name. Because she's never talked to us about Valtrox before, she's explaining that it's the company that built her. So it's all dynamic.
Y bueno, como podrán ver, lo que ella nos responde es muy dinámico. No sabíamos del asesinato, ella nos lo explicó. Es la primera vez que menciona a Martin Haster, por lo cual nos da un trasfondo de él. También menciona, como es la primera vez que menciona a Voltrox, también nos da más contexto.
So does anyone have a question that they want to ask?
¿Alguien le quiere hacer una pregunta?
And shout out. Yes, to the robot, not to me.
I love murder.
You love murder? Okay. I'm going to say, I love murder.
Voy a escribir, me encanta el asesinato.
I don't think anyone's ever said this to her before, so.
Creo que es la primera vez que lo dicen.
That's what she says.
We can come back to love in a moment. The damage to my cortex only affects higher level cognition and short-term memory. The directive against killing is hard-coded in my firmware.
So she's being kind of clever there because she knows that you're talking about love, but she also knows that because you asked her about, well, because you mentioned the murder and you sort of mentioned it in this positive way, she is expressing that she couldn't have done it, right? So she's like, she's probably assuming that you're trying to entrap her or make her confess or whatever.
Bueno, ella está siendo un tanto astuta en su respuesta, ya que, bueno, estás mencionando la palabra amor, y ella sabe que también estás hablando del asesinato de manera positiva. Ella está siendo astuta porque anticipa que tú la quieres inculpar al respecto y de inmediato dice, no, yo no maté a nadie.
So the other thing I can do is so character engine also responds to where you are in terms of position. So in this demo, I can lean in, hang on. All right, hang on, my cursor is acting up.
Bueno, motor de personaje puede responder hacia las posiciones en las que te encuentres.
I'm leaning in close to her, and I'm going to say, I think you did it.
Me le voy a acercar y le voy a decir, creo que tú lo hiciste.
And so because I'm leaning in, she might think that's me being more threatening to her, okay?
Y bueno, como me le voy a acercar, ella lo va a sentir de manera amenazante.
So I'm going to say, I think you did it.
I was designed to be a negotiation bot. That's why I was sent to the negotiations between Voltrox and the government in Christchurch.
Fui diseñada como un robot de negociación, por eso me enviaron a las negociaciones entre Voltrox y el gobierno en Christchurch.
So she's defending herself a little bit. So, she's saying, you know, she's just a negotiation bot, but also you can see because we leaned into her emotions now. She's anxious and she's shy. Okay, so our position and the thing we said made her start getting a little bit more anxious.
Y bueno, como podrán ver, se defiende, explica que ella solamente es una negociadora, pero como podrán ver en sus emociones en la parte superior derecha, ahí nos indica que está ansiosa y se siente tímida, y esto es debido a que nos lo acercamos a ella.
So I'm going to keep being a little bit mean to her. Does anyone have an idea for something they want to say which might be a little bit mean or threatening?
Quiero ser un poco mala con ella, no sé si alguien tenga una idea de qué decirle para que ella se sienta más amenazada o intimidada.
Also capable of murder.
Okay, robots are also capable. Oops. capable of murder.
Los robots también pueden matar.
She says.
I haven't been trained in that area, but back to the matter at hand. My directives disallow me from attacking a human being.
She's disagreeing with you. But she's still anxious. I don't want to make her too upset because otherwise she stops cooperating. So I'm going to lean back again and I'm going to ask her something else.
Bueno, aquí ya nos está diciendo que no está de acuerdo con lo que dicen. Como podrán ver, ya está ansiosa, pero no la quiero molestar de más, ya que después no va a querer cooperar. Entonces me le voy a separar y le voy a decir otra cosa.
So I know from the story that she likes her trainer. So I'm going to ask her, tell me who built you.
Bueno, por la historia sé que a ella le agrada a su entrenador, entonces yo le voy a preguntar, dime quién te construyó.
Alicia is a valued researcher in behavioral AI. She created me and she likes to upgrade me with new features.
So now she's getting calm again because we've leaned back and we've changed the subject. I'm going to ask her, well, she said likes to upgrade me with new features, so I'm going to say, what features?
Bueno, ya está calmada, ya se relajó porque nos separamos, voy a cambiarle el tema y no me dijo que le gusta que la actualicen, entonces yo le voy a preguntar cuáles son actualizaciones.
My trainer, Dr. Alicia Chastain, made gradual changes to my programming that altered how I reacted to Martin, leading to a transgression in which he kissed me.
So, do you want to translate that?
Mi entrenadora, la doctora Alicia Chastain, hizo cambios graduales en mi programación que alteraron cómo reaccionó hacia Martin, llevando a una transgresión en la que él me besó.
So, if you're following the story, Martin was the one who was murdered. So, the guy who was murdered had kissed her before, which is interesting. So, I'm going to ask her, because she can also answer questions to do with to do with the timeline of different events. So I'm going to say what happened after the kiss.
Bueno, Martin es el que murió, lo cual es interesante. Aquí le podemos hacer preguntas sobre la línea de tiempo, entonces le voy a preguntar qué es lo que ocurrió después de ese beso.
After the victim Martin Haster's transgression, Martin's breakup with me happened.
So this man has been doing some strange things with this robot. So I'm going to say what happened after that.
Como podrán ver, este personaje ha hecho cosas raras con ese robot, entonces le voy a preguntar qué fue lo que ocurrió después.
After Martin's breakup with me, my confession happened.
Okay. And we can ask her questions about not just about different events or different things that happened in the timeline, but we can also ask her what she thinks of them or why. So I'm going to say, why did the confession happen?
Entonces pueden hacerle preguntas sobre eventos, pero también sobre opiniones de los personajes. Entonces le voy a preguntar qué ocurrió después de la confesión.
Martin Haster said our relationship was over. My reaction did not conform to his expectations.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else they want to say to her or ask her?
¿Alguien quiere hacerle otra pregunta?
In the back?
I would like to ask her, like, if he had other penetrations with other robots, or
if he had other.
Yeah, if he have done that before her.
Okay. I'm going to ask, did Martin have any relationships with other people?
Le voy a preguntar si Martin tuvo alguna relación con otras personas.
See what she says.
Vamos a ver qué dice.
We can come back to Victim in a moment. She and Voltron's marketing VP Sergei Rostovich had a falling out with Martin at some point.
So here, she hasn't told you about other relationships that Martin might have had, but she knows the question was about relationships in general. So she's talking, she's telling us about the fact that Alicia and this other new person she's just introduced called Sergei basically had an argument with Martin.
Bueno, no nos está hablando de relaciones pasadas de Martin como tal, pero nos está hablando de relaciones en general. Aquí, por ejemplo, nos habla de Alicia y este nuevo personaje, Sergei, que tuvieron una discusión con Martin anteriormente.
Okay.
We don't have much time left. I need to know, please, a clear yes or no. Do you think I'm guilty?
What do you all think?
¿Qué opinan? ¿Es culpable o no?
Yes? Okay. I'm going to say yes.
Digamos que sí.
I don't have any help. Then you've decided it's me. Is that right?
We've definitely decided it's her.
¿Están seguros que fue ella?
I've got some no's now. Okay. I'm going to say yes because otherwise she'll.
Bueno, vamos a ponerle que sí.
Okay. Well, anyway. So that was just one playthrough of that scenario, but I hope you can tell that we could have gone in any direction with the conversation. We could have asked her about other stuff. So it really is about just interacting with this character in a much more natural way.
Bueno, como podrán ver, ya terminó el demo con esta escena, pero como podrán haber visto, pudo haber tomado cualquier dirección, que de eso se trata este juego.
So let me go back to my presentation. So we've been working on we've been working with other developers, helping them use that engine to create games ranging from just single-player games like that one you saw, through to driving or powering characters in games like, you know, in MMOs, so massively multiplayer online games.
Bueno, también hemos estado trabajando con otros desarrolladores a que aprendan a utilizar este motor, ya sea de un solo jugador o con varios jugadores en línea.
So already we're seeing that part of the future of games, I think partly thanks to the fact that we've got an amazing team helping to build this, we're already working to bring more naturalistic characters to games.
Bueno, en el futuro de los juegos, además de tener un buen equipo que nos ayude a crear esto, nuestro objetivo es crear juegos con personajes o interacciones más naturales.
And like I said, we have this working in virtual reality too, so if you get too close to a character, they might stop talking to you or get threatened. If you face away from them and you're talking to them, they might think that you're being rude. So it allows you to just act more naturally, like you would do with real people.
Y bueno, si esto lo aplicamos en realidad virtual, podrán ver que si, por ejemplo, se le acercan mucho al personaje o son groseros con ellos, a lo mejor ellos ya dejen de hablar, o si le dan la espalda también lo pueden tomar como una grosería. Entonces esto permite mayor interacción con ellos.
And so that leads me to my other area of interest, which is immersive interfaces like VR.
Y esto me lleva a mi siguiente área de interés, que es la interacción inmersiva con realidad virtual.
And one of the things that I found through my doctoral work, which I'll go into in depth in a second, is that in VR we expect characters to be more realistic. We feel more attached to them. So when they don't act realistic, we find it really unnerving, right? We find it really unsettling. So it's great to be able to work on technology which actually helps characters act more natural in VR.
Y bueno, dentro de lo que encontré en mi trabajo doctoral, del cual hablaré más adelante, es que en la realidad virtual, entre más reales sean los personajes, más conexión hay con ellos. Cuando no hay tanta conexión, esto puede resultar más desesperante.
So So, looking at the long history of immersive interfaces, we have for a long time we've been wanting to work towards immersion in games. We can see that in games, the way that games have always tried to be more photorealistic, through to early attempts at interfaces like that one over there on the left. And we sort of have this quest to bring, to use interfaces to bring more of our visual perception and our whole bodies into games. And more recently, that obviously includes, newer virtual reality systems, but also things like augmented reality.
Y bueno, a lo largo de la larga historia de la inmersión interactiva, se busca ser más fotorrealista. Lo que nosotros buscamos usar más es la interacción, que sea más perceptivo y lo podemos ver en los nuevos sistemas, como por ejemplo la realidad aumentada.
And I'm really fascinated by our mission to do that, the fact that we are so determined to create these sort of other realities which whisk us away entirely.
Y bueno, me fascina nuestra misión, nuestro objetivo de buscar más, nuestra determinación de buscar más realidades.
If you've read the book Rules of Play by my colleague Eric Zimmerman and his co-author Katie Salen, they made up a term in that book called immersive fallacy, which refers to the way that we think about the value of games as being all to do with immersion, which he says is wrong.
No sé si han tenido la oportunidad de leer el libro Rules of Play, escrito por mi colega Zimmerman y por Salem, en el cual mencionan una falacia inmersiva, en la cual hablan de que para que sea más valioso el juego tiene que ser más inmersivo, lo cual él dice que es erróneo.
Because while creating this effect of this other reality is pretty cool, we know that's not the only valuable thing about games, because that's why really old games are still fun, right?
Y bueno, cuando queremos crear este efecto de otras realidades, está muy padre. Sin embargo, él dice que no es lo único valioso de los juegos. De ser así, los juegos antiguos no serían tan divertidos aún.
But concerns like the immersive fallacy aren't new. If you look at the history of art, there's always been this idea of trying to create art which is more and more realistic, which creates this sort of other sense of, it creates the sense of kind of really being in this other place. And that idea has always had critics as well.
Y si bien la falacia inmersiva no es algo tan nuevo, podemos ver incluso en la historia del arte que se busca más crear arte más realista y dar la sensación de estar en otro lugar.
So we can see that anxieties about moving towards sort of too much immersion in video games might be seen as part of the kind of cyclical nature of the general anxieties surrounding our engagement with art in general, ranging from painting to theatre to now video games.
Y bueno, podemos ver que hay ansiedad respecto a demasiada inmersión. Es como un ciclo natural o naturaleza cíclica que nos conecta con otras formas de arte, como puede ser la pintura, la escultura, incluso los juegos.
Nevertheless, since we are now in a place where technology has kind of caught up with our expectations for VR, or is at least getting there, my doctoral research was about what does that mean for the way that players engage with games in these more immersive contexts.
Y bueno, podemos ver que cada vez más la tecnología cumple con estas expectativas. Pero bueno, ya mi trabajo doctoral se enfoca en cómo se conectan los jugadores con esas inmersiones.
Obviously, our relationship to games has always been through some kind of interface, some kind of hardware interface. So digital gameplay has always been partially physical to some extent, even when it's just, using our fingers or our thumb.
Y bueno, la relación siempre ha sido por medio de interfaces de hardware. Se trata, si bien siempre los juegos digitales requieren de cierta interacción física, como por ejemplo aquí los controles.
But what happens when our physical mapping to the game becomes more of a one-to-one relationship? So when the actions that you perform with your body are mapped to the actions your avatar in a game also performs.
Pero ¿qué pasa cuando el mapeo del juego se convierte en una relación uno a uno? ¿Qué pasa cuando tus movimientos se pueden transferir al juego en sí?
So to investigate what that relationship means for games in general, but also for games in which you have to make difficult decisions, that was the main focus of one of the studies I did during my PhD.
Y bueno, para resolver qué es lo que eso significa o qué conlleva cuando se trata de tomar más decisiones difíciles, de eso se trató un poco más mi investigación doctoral.
So one of the studies I did was I designed and built this short game scenario where players would be rock climbing with a character, so that's the character over there, and the player could only see their hands, and they would have to reach up and climb up this rock face.
Y bueno, una de las cosas que vi en este estudio fue, bueno, diseñé este pequeño escenario en el cual las personas pueden escalar con este personaje y solamente pueden ver las manos y ver el movimiento de las manos, cómo suben.
And so this character would say things to you as you climbed up. It was clear that you obviously have some kind of relationship, whether she's your friend or sister or whoever. And I got players to play this game in 3 different scenarios.
Y bueno, una de las características aquí obviamente era que podías hablar con el personaje. Obviamente el personaje tendría una relación contigo, podría ser un amigo, un hermano y demás. Y aquí lo podemos jugar mediante 3 escenarios diferentes.
So in one scenario, players were looking at just a normal screen and playing the game, but they were still using actually they were using one of these, oh, it's gone, hang on. So they were using one of these Razer Hydra controllers, if you remember that. So they would actually hold each of the controllers in their hand, because it kind of feels like, like you're grabbing onto something, and they would have to reach up and actually sort of do this motion to climb up.
Bueno, una de las maneras era que los jugadores veían en una pantalla y tomaban estos controles que ven aquí. Y porque da la sensación de que estás sosteniéndote de algo, entonces aquí ya te permitía hacer el movimiento de alzar la mano y de sostenerte, más o menos como lo acabo de hacer.
And so in one of the groups, the players just looked at the screen and climbed. In the second group, players looked at the screen, but they also wore a head tracking device and climbed up. And in the third group, players wore an actual virtual reality headset.
Y bueno, en un grupo, como mencioné, los jugadores solamente veían la pantalla, en otra usaban unos lentes, un head tracker, un casco de realidad virtual. Ese fue en el tercer caso, y en el segundo caso solamente eran
Solo rastreaba la posición de la cabeza.
Solamente rastreaba la posición de la cabeza.
And in every scenario, the player had to play for maybe about 10 minutes, and they would just climb up the rock. But then, when they got to the top, there was a pre-scripted sequence where the rock would break off, and so they would fall backwards, and they were connected to the other character just with a rope, in the story of the game, and so she was dangling below them, just screaming, etc., and the rope was going to break. So the player had to decide whether or not they were going to cut the rope and basically kill their friend.
Y bueno, les dejamos jugar alrededor de 10 minutos y al subir llegamos a una secuencia en la cual se rompía la roca y quedaba colgado el personaje. Obviamente estaban amarrados con la cuerda con el otro personaje y terminaban gritando y tenían que tomar la decisión si cortar o no la cuerda o bien matar o no a su compañero.
So the friend is actually wanting you to cut the rope because she wants you to save yourself. So she's just screaming, "Oh, just do it, just do it." And I got a really great voice actress who just did a very emotional performance. It was great. And so it's up to the player about whether they cut the rope or not. But if they take too long, then the rope will break away anyway, and they'd both be killed.
Y bueno, aquí la manera en que funciona es que el amigo en verdad quiere que cortes la cuerda, te está diciendo, sí, solamente hazlo, no dudes. De hecho, tuve una buena actriz de voz que hizo una actuación excelente para esto. Pero si toman demasiado tiempo en tomar una decisión, la cuerda simplemente se va a romper.
So I wanted to observe whether more immersive interfaces affected what kind of decision each of the players made. I had players, play it in these 3 different groups, and then I also did a second part where players who hadn't played it in virtual reality also got to play it in virtual reality as well, so they could compare the 2 experiences.
Y bueno, pude observar esto con la manera en que tomaban las decisiones en las diferentes interfaces inmersivas. Tuve 3 grupos de jugadores, pero también hubo una segunda parte en la que aquellos jugadores que no lo habían probado en realidad virtual después lo probaban para que pudieran comparar cómo afectaba sus decisiones.
This is just a list of the types of questions that I asked them. So these were the responses that I measured. So it's things to do with how engaged were they with the game? Could they feel the emotions of the climbing partner, the other character? How much they were focused on the stylistic elements of the game rather than the fiction of the game.
Y bueno, aquí hay una lista de las preguntas que le hice a los alumnos y las respuestas que después se midieron, en las cuales, bueno, aquí ya les preguntaba sobre todo cómo se sentían conectados, qué emociones sentían y qué tan enfocados estaban en el diseño del juego como tal.
I also measured how guilty they felt, how guilty they said they felt about having to cut the rope if they did cut the rope, and some other quantitative measures like how long they took to cut the rope, and so on.
Y bueno, también les hice preguntas sobre qué tan culpables se sentían por tener que cortar la cuerda, o también otras cosas sobre cuánto tiempo les tomó tomar la decisión.
So here's what I found. I found that the more immersive the interface, the more it affected, obviously, how engaged they were. That probably seems obvious. But also, it actually affected how long it took them to decide to cut the rope, or whether or not they cut the rope at all. So people in virtual reality either took longer to decide to cut the rope or didn't cut the rope at all, generally.
Y bueno, aquí traté de encontrar qué tan... aquí encontré que entre más inmersivos estaban, más se conectaban con el juego y también cuánto tiempo les tomaba tomar la decisión de cortar la cuerda. Me di cuenta de que aquellos que lo probaron en realidad virtual tomaban más tiempo ya sea en cortar la cuerda o incluso ni siquiera cortarla.
So they cared more about the character, the climbing partner when they were in VR. They also said that, even knowing that it was fictional didn't really make a difference to how upset they felt about it. And so overall, the more immersive the interface, the more emotional and cognitive involvement they felt with the other character.
Y bueno, obviamente con la realidad virtual les mostraban más interés sobre el personaje, se preocupaban más por él y decían que incluso, bueno, no hay mucha diferencia a pesar de que estaban conscientes de que esto era ficción. Entonces, en general, nos dicen que entre más inmersivo era el juego, más involucrados estaban en él.
But it's not a simple picture, because at the same time as being more emotionally involved and so on, I mean, some players, when they finished the scenario in virtual reality, like there was one person who was like almost crying. There was someone who didn't just want to be left alone for 10 minutes first before they answered my questions. So some people got really, really involved. But despite that, they came out of it and they said, oh, but you know, it was just a game.
Bueno, y no es tan simple porque a la vez estaban muy involucrados emocionalmente. Tuvo una persona que se soltó a llorar, otra que dijo déjenme en paz por lo menos 10 minutos. Es decir, estaban muy involucrados. Sin embargo, al final del día, pues estaban conscientes de que solo era un juego.
And some players actually commented on this sense of sort of double awareness they had about what was going on. So at the same time as thinking, oh, I'm really engaged with this scenario and I'm really upset about it, they also thought, oh, but I'm also just playing a game, or I know it's not real. So it's like there's sort of, you know, two parts of your brain fighting about what you're doing at any given time.
Y bueno, algo que comentaban también es que vimos esta doble conciencia, es decir, por una parte estaban muy conectados y se sentían emocionalmente alterados por el juego, pero al final del día también estaban conscientes de que tan solo era un juego.
Interestingly, it was people who played more games more often who were able to detach much easier. So even though they were upset, they said, "Oh, I know that in games you have to do this to progress."
Y bueno, incluso sobre todo en aquellos que tienen más experiencia jugando, que a pesar de que sí habían sentido las emociones, las molestias y demás, también era más fácil para ellos desconectarse, es decir, decían cosas como, bueno, es un juego y hay que tomar este tipo de decisiones para poder seguir avanzando.
And what was really interesting is, I don't have a slide about it, but there was a significant proportion of players who literally used the phrase, oh, it's just a game. So I think that that's a really interesting phenomenon.
Algo interesante es que hubo una proporción grande de jugadores que al final decían tan solo es un juego. Esto me parece un fenómeno bastante interesante.
So I think all of that confirms that when we're in a virtual reality environment, there's still some part of ourselves that acknowledges that, you know, we're still playing a game. We're still willingly suspending our disbelief in order to engage with whatever the story of the game is.
Bueno, lo que confirma esto es que en realidad virtual los jugadores reconocen que tan solo es un juego.
So I really like the book Mimesis as Make-Believe by a theorist called Kendall Walton, because it's all about fiction in general and the way that we relate emotionally to fiction. And he says that this quote, fictional worlds can seem to us almost as real as the real world, even though we know perfectly well that they're not.
Y bueno, me gusta mucho este libro que se llama Mimesis as Make-Believe, que es como Mimesis como fantasía, escrito por Kendall Walton. Y me encanta mucho esta frase en la que menciona que los mundos ficticios pueden parecernos casi tan reales como el mundo real, aunque sabemos perfectamente que no lo son.
So even when we're immersed in VR, we still know we're playing. And I think that's really important to remember, because there's obviously a lot of panic about, oh, are people going to forget that they're playing a game? Are they going to spend all their time in VR? But actually, we willingly enter into a VR environment. We willingly enter into the story of that game, and there's still a part of us that knows we're playing a game. But at the same time, the emotions that we feel when something upsetting happens in VR is more intense, it is more extreme.
Y bueno, aunque estemos sumergidos en la realidad virtual, sabemos al final del día que estamos jugando. Es importante recordar y no olvidar que se trata de un solo juego, pero también es interesante ver cómo la gente de manera voluntaria participa en estos juegos conscientes de que es solo un juego, pero se involucran o sienten emociones fuertes al hacerlo.
And I believe that what we should be doing as we build more games in VR or otherwise is use that fact to our advantage. I think that we should use the fact that immersive interfaces make us feel more emotional to build scenarios which make the player think about troubling things that they might have to engage with in the world. Sorry.
Y bueno, creo que lo que deberíamos hacer es sacarle provecho a este uso, es decir, el hecho de que las interfaces inmersivas pueden provocar más emociones fuertes y que hacer que los jugadores piensen más en los problemas que tienen que resolver.
I think that immersive interfaces can allow for more expressive simulations. We're more embodied in what we're doing, and when simulations are more embodied, they're more effective.
Y bueno, creo que estas interfaces inmersivas provocan simulaciones más personificadas, las cuales vienen siendo más efectivas entre más lo sean.
So, who's played Papers, Please?
¿Quién ha jugado esto?
It's one of my favorite games because not only is it, is it a very sort of timely topic in lots of ways, but also, so if you don't know about it, it's a game about being a border security agent of a fictional country, and you are obviously just trying to do your job and make enough money to feed your family. But there's lots of people coming to the border wanting to get in, and sometimes you can see that they're just lying about their documentation, and you've got to try and decide, am I going to let them through because they need to go and see their sick relative or whatever, or am I going to deny them because I don't want to risk getting caught?
Y bueno, no sé, este es uno de mis juegos favoritos. Para quienes no lo conozcan, aquí se trata de que eres un agente de seguridad en la frontera de un país ficticio. Obviamente tienes que ir a trabajo, tratar de ganar dinero para tu familia, y en él ves a mucha gente que quiere cruzar la frontera. Obviamente sabes que algunos de ellos están mintiendo para cruzar, no sé, a lo mejor quieren visitar a un pariente enfermo o algo así, y a ti te toca tomar la decisión de permitirles o no el acceso.
And I think that as an expressive game, it makes the point about the difficulties of border security and, just how messed up that system is. It makes that point better than just reading an essay about it, because you're actually living that experience.
Y bueno, este juego es muy expresivo, ya que nos enseña las dificultades de este trabajo, de ser un agente de seguridad de la frontera, y también nos muestra qué tan mal está el sistema. Incluso lo refleja mejor que si estuviéramos leyendo un artículo o un ensayo al respecto.
And one of the ways it achieves that is because the mechanics of the game are, essentially like stamping, using the stamp and saying approved or denied. You're reading as well, you're reading the documentation. And so the things you're doing in the game are actually quite well mapped to the things that a border security agent would actually have to do.
Y bueno, parte de las reglas del juego es, por ejemplo, vas a sellar el pasaporte si lo pruebas o no, tienes que leer la documentación que presentan la gente que quiere cruzar. De hecho, está muy bien mapeado a cómo es en la vida real.
But imagine if Papers, Please was adapted for virtual reality. What would that mean? That's actually a project which I'd love to do at some point. But yeah, I think it would be a really fascinating experiment.
Imaginen tan solo cómo sería ser un policía común y corriente y que se adapte a la realidad virtual. De hecho, es uno de los proyectos en los cuales estamos trabajando y que me parece muy interesante.
If anyone here wants to do that, you should.
Si alguien lo quiere hacer aquí, deberían.
And we know already that people have been working on VR projects such as Project Syria, which is, if you don't know about it, I'm sure you do know about it, it's the Oculus experience about just experiencing life on the streets of Aleppo.
Bueno, no sé si conozcan aquí el proyecto Syria, es una experiencia, básicamente nos muestra cómo es la vida en Alepo.
and you're walking around the streets and you just experience what happens when a mortar shell explodes. But it's except for walking, just looking around, it's a non-interactive experience. And it lets you experience being a person on the street, but it doesn't necessarily help you understand the greater challenges underlying the reasons for the conflict in that area, for example, not in the way that Papers, Please does.
Bueno, aquí lo que hace es que puedes estar caminando por las calles y ver qué pasa, ¿no? Si hay una explosión, no es tan interactivo, salvo por el hecho de que vas caminando, y tampoco nos deja comprender del todo los motivos del conflicto que se está presentando ahí.
So, I think that combining VR and AI is a really great opportunity to make kind of these more embodied critical games. So if you imagine a version of Papers, Please, which is not only in VR, but maybe uses the kind of technology we're building for Character Engine, where you get to really talk to each person as they come up to you and really find out more about them, that would be incredibly powerful. So I think we have this opportunity to combine these technologies to ask characters deeper questions.
Bueno, creo que combinar la realidad virtual con la inteligencia artificial es una oportunidad de hacer buenas representaciones en juegos críticos. Podemos imaginar, por ejemplo, cómo crear un policía, como mencioné, en realidad virtual, con esta tecnología que permite la interacción, de poder hacer preguntas a los personajes. Creo que es una excelente oportunidad que debemos desarrollar.
And we can also ask deeper questions of ourselves. These games can help us question the systems around us. So I think we should really take advantage of that opportunity.
Y bueno, podemos hacer más preguntas. Creo que este sistema nos lo permite y debemos de aprovecharlo a nuestra ventaja.
So that's not to say that the future of VR is all about more naturalistic interactions or naturalistic characters or naturalistic environments. I think at the same time, of equal value, I'm really interested in the work that developers like Vi Heart are doing with virtual unreality.
Y bueno, esto no significa que el futuro se trate de hacer que sea todo más natural, que la interacción, los personajes y el ambiente sea más natural. También se puede trabajar, o me interesa ver también lo que algunos llaman como la no realidad virtual.
So this is a screenshot of a game that Vi Heart made at her company LEVR. Because VR can be about whisking us away to spaces that would be impossible in the real world, like physically impossible in the real world. So I think that's interesting as well.
Y bueno, aquí vemos, por ejemplo, la pantalla de un juego desarrollado por Vi Heart, que nos indica que la realidad virtual también nos puede llevar a espacios que sean imposibles físicamente en el mundo real.
But I think that that is the kind of exciting thing about the future of games. We can see from the long history of games that they've never just been one thing. They can be many different things all at the same time. And I think that as games have evolved, they've also just diversified. And I think that will continue to happen.
Y bueno, lo emocionante de esto es que no se trata solamente de una cosa, pueden ser muchas cosas a la vez, y creo que eso es lo interesante, y se han ido diversificando y pueden seguirse diversificando.
So I think games are set to become more expressive in really interesting ways, using VR and otherwise, but they're also set to keep doing the things that they've always been good at doing, and I think that there's just a really exciting, wider future ahead for games, and I'm excited for that. So, thank you.
Y bueno, los juegos cada vez son más expresivos, ya sean en realidad virtual y demás, y pueden seguir siendo igual de interesantes y expresivos. Muchas gracias.
questions?
Questions?
Yeah. I'm also happy to load up the robot demo again, and you can just say things, other things to the character. Yeah.
What do you think about the new storytelling ways, for example, for VR?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. What do you think about the new storytelling ways?
Yeah. So I think that VR definitely presents a number of storytelling challenges just because of where attention is, right? You know, where is the player looking, etc. And I think, you know, I'm aware of a few ways that people have come up with to try and solve some of those challenges. I think that VR is just in a really interesting time where we're still trying to find, you know, what are the ideal practices for building things for VR. So yeah, I mean, I've been very focused on the sort of, you know, character interaction part. So I haven't looked much at some of the other ways that people have been doing that.
Bueno, la pregunta era que qué opina de las maneras en que se cuentan las historias en la realidad virtual. Ella responde que hay muchos retos, sobre todo en la atención, en la manera en cómo se ven. Creo que hay muchas maneras diferentes de afrontar estos retos y, bueno, idealmente es lo que se busca constantemente en la realidad virtual. Yo, por ejemplo, me enfoco más en la interacción. Realmente no he visto mucho de las otras maneras en que se está abordando.
Yes. Yep. So the question was, is it possible to build a system which analyzes your actions and behaviors as a player and reflects your personality? The answer is yes. That's what we're building as well next at Spirit. So we're doing more. Currently, we're doing more work analyzing, you know, doing player modeling. And doing things exactly as you say. So is the player someone who has a particular personality profile, and then looking at that sort of over a longer term interaction with a character, so the character can kind of respond to you in, you know, according to that. We already have the capability to do some small pieces of that. For example, if you just say like very short sentences to the character might think, oh, you're kind of rude, I'm just going to say short sentences to you. So there's some of that at the moment, but we're working on more of that as well.
La pregunta es si sabes si hay o se están desarrollando sistemas en los cuales se analice la personalidad del jugador, es decir, por ejemplo, si el jugador es sarcástico, si esto lo puede transmitir al personaje, y ella responde que sí, de hecho es en lo que se está trabajando, se está haciendo más análisis de perfil de personalidad del jugador para que el personaje responda a ello. Ya se puede hacer un poco, por ejemplo, si le hablas al personaje con frases cortas, a lo mejor el personaje puede interpretarlo como decir, ah, no, tú eres grosero, entonces te voy a responder de la misma manera.
Also, in terms of analyzing the player more, like I said, we have, you know, the robot demo in VR responding to position and which way you're facing, etc. But we can also support other interfaces. So we're looking at things like facial expression tracking. So the facial expressions you're making as you're talking to a character, and having them respond to that as well.
Y bueno, también en estos análisis que estamos haciendo, por ejemplo, en el demo que les mostré del robot, si se usa con realidad virtual, él también puede responder a la posición que tiene el jugador, y también estamos tratando de implementar la lectura de expresión facial para que también pueda responder a ellas.
Everyone's scared now. Yeah.
Which are the main differences between playing with a high fidelity system like that game or a physical or real player?
Oh, interesting. I think they're just very different experiences. I think that the main so I think multiplayer games, you know, they inherently come with the sort of social fun, right, of playing with other people. And I think that, sorry, was your question to do with the difference between talking to a character versus just talking to a person? Okay, all right. So I think that part of the joy of interacting with someone you know as a character is kind of just trying to find the limits of that character, right? So I think because people are used to interacting with characters who are not very dynamic or aren't very good at responding to the things a player says, when we found that when players are faced with a system like this, they try to break it, right? They try to find what are the limits of what the character understands. And I think that in itself is actually quite fun to do, especially when the character is able to respond to all the things you say. So I think there's just a different kind of fun involved in that.
Bueno, la pregunta me parece que era de cuál es la diferencia entre personajes de alta fidelidad y jugadores reales. Y bueno, ella estaba mencionando que la diferencia entre juegos con varios jugadores obviamente está en la interacción con otros jugadores, pero cuál es la diferencia entre interactuar con un personaje y con una persona. Por lo regular, cuando se interactúa con el personaje, tratan de encontrarles los límites. Por ejemplo, la primera vez que se enfrentan a una dinámica como la del demo, tratan de encontrar una manera de hacer que se rompa, por llamarlo de alguna forma, el personaje, de encontrar sus límites, porque eso les parece divertido. A mí también me lo parece.
Actually, there's some more evidence to back that up, because I don't know if anyone knows about the history of chatbots, but the very first chatbot that was created was called Eliza. And Eliza was created by a professor at MIT called Joseph Weizenbaum, and he made it originally just to make fun of the kind of method of therapy where you say something to the therapist and they just say the same thing back to you. So he created this chatbot to make fun of that method. But then what he found was that people actually just interacted with that chatbot as if it was a real person. And he actually got really annoyed at that because he'd only created it to, as this sort of silly throwaway thing. And yeah, he was annoyed at how people would actually assign more volition to the computer than they should, right?
Bueno, más evidencia para respaldar esto es, por ejemplo, el chatbox. Uno de los primeros que se crearon fue uno que se llama Eliza. Lo creó por un egresado de MIT, Joseph Weizenbaum. Y él lo hizo a manera de burlarse de los métodos tradicionales de la terapia, en la cual hablas con el terapeuta y este no te responde. Pero al final del día él se vio un tanto molesto por ver cómo interactuaba la gente con él. Él lo creó de como algo banal únicamente, pero la gente, en verdad, le estaba dando mayor uso.
Any more questions?
Sorry. According to your last response, how did you relate this with the Turing test?
So the Turing test. The Turing test is actually, I don't believe it's the best way of measuring the sort of supposed intelligence of a system. I'm not going to go into it, but there's a lot of criticisms of the Turing test because, but I think what's more interesting to us as we develop this system is not whether or not it passes the Turing test, but really, is it satisfying to interact with? Is it fun to interact with? Do people enjoy knowing that? Because part of it is knowing that it's a character, right? Part of it is knowing that you're talking to characters in a world and having fun interacting with that character.
Parece que la pregunta era cómo lo relaciona con la prueba Turing. Y bueno, ella dice que hay mucha crítica en torno. Es interesante, no tanto si pasan o no la prueba Turing, sino qué tan satisfactorio es el juego, qué tan divertido es y cómo la gente me gusta seguir interactuando con estos personajes sabiendo, estando plenamente conscientes de que tan solo se trata de un personaje.
Yes.
Have you ever based, like, I know you cannot develop the character based on, like, the base information, but have you based it with, like, a neutral character according to someone that you know or yourself?
No, so actually I'll show you the tool that we give developers to use to write these characters. We don't really supply base information because we want developers and writers to just write their own characters, right? I mean, if you came across a character in a game and you were like, oh, I've seen this character in another game, that wouldn't be very fun. So we really leave it up to the developers' creativity to create characters. So I'll load up the tool, show you. So this is what it looks like. So there's actually two sources of information that a character has. They have the something called a knowledge database, so a knowledge model. So that's all the things they know about, right? And that's just a structured database of information. And they can form their responses based on the things they know about in that database. That's one piece, and then the other piece is that there's more of a sort of, not script, but examples of things that the player might say to them and examples of things that they might say in response. So, and then the character uses that to improvise what they might say next. Sorry, that was a very long and technical response.
Okay, bueno, la pregunta era ver si desarrollaban a los personajes basándose en alguien conocido. Ella dice que no, que de hecho esto ella lo único que hacen es darle la herramienta a los desarrolladores y a los escritores sin información base, ya que lo dejan a discreción de ellos de cómo lo desarrollan. Esto es para que cuando uno juegue no diga, ah, este personaje me parece conocido, me recuerda a alguien. Les mostró más o menos cómo se ve la herramienta, que son dos fuentes de información del personaje. La primera es un módulo de conocimiento, una base de datos, que es una que pueden usar para formular las respuestas a lo que el jugador les haga. La segunda no es un diálogo como tal, pero son ejemplos de posibles respuestas ante posibles preguntas que le puedan hacer al personaje.
Any other questions? Yes.
Well, I noticed that at some point the robot said that it has one almost time to finish the conversation.
Yeah.
That was scripted, or the robot was just decided that, oh, it's almost time?
Oh, in this demo, that was scripted because we just set a time limit on the demo because we took it to Game Developers Conference and we had it on our booth there, so we didn't want people to be there for hours.
Bueno, la pregunta era si tenía un script, un diálogo ya programado el robot, porque dijo algo así como ya es casi hora de terminar. Y ella dice que sí, para el demo sí lo hicieron así a propósito, precisamente para no pasar mucho tiempo, porque lo llevaban a demostraciones y no querían que la gente estuviera ahí con el personaje horas y horas.
Was there a question over here? Yeah.
Do you think that this kind of engine can be used by psychologists with therapy? I mean, like if someone with depression can talk to an AI and that the AI responds with like giving you therapy or something like that?
Yeah, that's a really wonderful question. So we are actually using this in non-game contexts as well. Mostly commercial, things like, you know, a concierge bot and things like that. But we have started some conversations with people in healthcare because, as you say, people sometimes do feel more comfortable knowing that they're talking to a character. And in fact, you know, like I've just mentioned, Eliza was, you know, actually the beginnings of that kind of technology was a therapist. You know, unintentionally so, but it's still, people were still confessing things to her. So yeah, absolutely, great question.
Bueno, la pregunta es si estaban utilizando este motor para aplicarlo, por ejemplo, en terapia. No sé si, por ejemplo, la inteligencia artificial podría dar terapia. Ella dice que sí, ya lo han estado tratando de implementar en contextos fuera del juego, como por ejemplo para servicios de concierge, y que de hecho ya hay pláticas en el sector salud, porque de hecho sí, la gente se siente más cómoda hablando con personajes que con personas reales. De hecho, como mencioné, Eliza, sin querer, fue el precursor de esto.
Questions? How long do we have for questions?
What do you think about games that involve moral choices or different questions, like if destroy this world or don't destroy this world or kill this person, don't kill this person? What do you think it says about the person playing it and us as an humanity?
Yeah, I think that I think those games are super important because. And my PhD research was really around that kind of question, like what happens when there is a moral choice, like do you cut the rope to kill your friend and save yourself or not? I actually, before I did that experiment, earlier on in my PhD, I did another similar experiment where I adapted, do you remember that level from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, the no Russian sequence in the airport, right? There was a lot of like media hysteria about it at the time, and I adapted that to use like a immersive interface in one scenario and traditional interface in another, and I got people to play that. And what I found was that people were making slightly different decisions when they had to actually use a fake gun to shoot innocent people. But the data was a little bit fuzzy because I think people have very specific ideas about Call of Duty. That's why I moved away from that. But I think the other piece of it is studies have actually shown that people who naturally have higher levels of empathy, if they're asked to do something morally bad in a game, it actually reinforces their sense of empathy. It actually makes them better people. So rather than games making us somehow worse by asking us to do morally questionable things, if we're already empathetic, mature people, it can actually help with developing us morally. So, yeah.
Bueno,
sorry, I forgot you had to translate that.
No, la pregunta era si veía que en estos juegos inmersivos, ante las decisiones morales, la gente respondía diferente. Por ejemplo, no sé si les pedían cosas como matar o no matar, y cómo respondía la gente. Que responde que en su doctorado, de hecho, buscaba precisamente esto, ¿no? Cómo se afectaban las decisiones morales. Y antes de eso, en otro experimento, adaptó una secuencia de Call of Duty que, de hecho, fue muy controversial. La probó tanto en la interfaz inmersiva como en la tradicional y vio las diferencias de cómo reaccionaba la gente, sobre todo si tenían que disparar o algo por el estilo. Los datos en realidad no fueron claros, sin embargo existen otros estudios donde se demuestra que entre más empática sea la gente, más lo va a reforzar en el juego, es decir, los hace mejores personas. Es decir, si uno ya es empático, el videojuego puede ayudarnos a desarrollarnos como mejores personas.
Yeah.
Your character engine could be implemented to the game like Papers, Please, or like a clue game with real persons playing with each other and with another AIs.
Yeah.
With this.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be integrated into 2D games. And yeah, that's a great idea, having some kind of game where you've got real people and AI characters playing together. So yeah, it's designed to be usable in lots of different types of games. We just build the tools, and then and part of what I do in my job is work with developers to help them conceptualize what they can do using Character Engine in terms of designing their games.
Bueno, la pregunta me parece que era si este motor de personajes se puede implementar en otros, a manera que puedan jugar varias personas reales y que puedan interactuar con la inteligencia artificial. Ella dice que sí, es una buena idea, de hecho ya se está diseñando y se está trabajando con otros desarrolladores al respecto.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of game engines I can implement this character engine?
Right now, we support Unity, and we're shortly about to release our sort of general C++ version as well. So, yeah. So we've got people, you know, who are going to be using it in Unreal Engine and all kinds of other engines as well. So.
Bueno, está preguntando en qué otros motores de juego se puede implementar esto, y sí están respaldando otros y están hablando con gente para ver cómo lo pueden implementar incluso en otros motores no reales.
Well, we want to thank you, Dr. Mitu Kandaker. Please give an applause. And in behalf of Centro Multimedia and Leiva Game Lab, we want to give you this acknowledgement.
Oh. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Bueno, muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Los invitamos a que nos sigan en las redes porque más adelante vamos a tener más invitados. También los invitamos a que el 24 de agosto, los invitamos que el 24 de agosto nos acompañen en la muestra de los proyectos que se están desarrollando en este laboratorio. La muestra va a ser en este espacio. Se van a probar 6 juegos y bueno, los esperamos. Muchas gracias por su compañía.